Hello, welcome back to the Freelance Software Show. Today we talk about VAT, which is a really simple topic actually. Everyone thinks it's really complicated and they think, oh, do you know, if I can avoid VAT, it'll be the best thing ever because it sounds really complex and I can't be bothered to do it. But VAT is actually really, really easy, especially if you use modern bookkeeping software, which you should all be using if you're running your own business. I'm going to walk you through using my lovely flip chart here at the co-working space, how it works. Now, my mathematical calculations aren't always the best. I'm not very good at maths, so some of these might not be the correct percentages or values, but you'll get the idea of what I'm trying to talk about. It's not about being perfectly correct. I'm giving you the gist of how this works. So, when should you and when should you not be VAT registered? I think you should always be VAT registered if you can be, especially in our line of business. There is one side of the story though where you might not want to be VAT registered, and this is if, for example, you are, I don't know, a sole trader, you're an electrician, you're a plumber, you're someone that goes out to people's houses to kind of fix things. So there's more of a business to consumer relationship there, because the downside to being VAT registered there is that you have to charge VAT on everything that you sell to a customer, including your services. So if I'm a plumber and I charge £50 an hour, it's not actually £55 an hour. I'm going to have to actually charge £50 an hour for myself. That £50 I'm getting for myself. But what the customer's actually going to pay in that sense at 20% VAT is actually they need to pay £60 an hour. £10 of that goes to the government. And the rest of the 50 goes to me. Now that's a bad thing if you're working with a business to consumer relationship, because the consumer is the one that has to pay, which means if there are people out there, plumbers, electricians that aren't VAT registered, they're going to be a little bit more competitive on price and people are likely going to use them. So being VAT registered has its downsides if you're working with consumers, but if you're working directly from business to business, pretty much every business is VAT registered. So VAT has no effect on them whatsoever, and I'm going to show you how. So let's say we have, and here I'm going to talk about a VAT pot, right? I'm going to call this my little kind of VAT pot. Now, I don't know if you can actually read that, but this is how I do it in my bank. So I've got a business bank account and I have a VAT space that is set up. And in that space, I kind of just keep track of how much VAT I'm going to owe to the taxman. And I make sure it's always in there and it's up to date every week or so, so that I'm never kind of guessing, so to speak, and that I'm not getting my real money muddled up with the taxman's money, which is important. And this is the same when it comes to other taxes as well. But for this video, we have one VAT pot, and I encourage you to do the same. Banks like Starling, Monzo, they have the ability to create spaces or different pots, so to speak, and that is what I recommend. If your bank doesn't support that, I actually highly recommend getting a separate bank account specifically for this, because if your money gets muddled, it gets very dangerous. So here's how it works. Maybe I'll come over this side, I don't know, I've never done this before. So as a business, if I buy a laptop for, I'm going to put here laptop, and that costs me £1,200, hypothetically. Now that is the price that I see on the website. So that is going to be £1,200 including VAT, right? So at 20%, what that means is, let's say I buy this from Apple. Apple are actually only getting £1,000 from that. So, and this is because, let's work it out. So if that is 20%, this is going to be £1,000 for the laptop. Let me just underline this so we know we're working under it. So it's actually going to be £1,000 for the laptop plus VAT at 20%. So 20% of 1,000 is 200. So that means we have 200 going to the VAT man. So what's happening here? Let's imagine I've got no other purchases, I've got no other income for my business, but I've just purchased a laptop. So this VAT pot right now is going to be kind of like zeroed out. No, nothing in there because there's nothing to owe or receive from the taxman. But I've just bought this laptop. Now what's going on here is that I've actually spent £200 of VAT. And because I'm VAT registered, I can actually tell HMRC, hey, I've spent £200 of VAT, so you owe me that £200, right? So technically, this VAT pot is sitting now at minus 200 because the government owe me £200. Now, it gets to the end of the month after I've bought my laptop and I invoice my first invoice to my customer. And I charge, I'm going to just use round figures here because I'm not very good at maths. I'm charging 10 grand for all of my time, right? Lucky me, eh? But because I'm VAT registered, I have to charge 20% on top of that. So what that's actually going to equate to is my invoice will actually total 12,000 because that is going to be 10 grand plus VAT at 20%. So what's actually happening is I'm billing the customer 12 grand, but when they get the invoice, they're, for all intents and purposes, like any invoice you receive or any purchase you make, are gonna look at this figure here and go, it's only really costing them 10 grand. So now what's happening is when I receive that 12 grand from the customer, I have to, in my head, know, right, I need to take 20% off of whatever it is at this kind of bottom line total and put that in my VAT pot. So the easiest way to do that, I know this is a round number and we can work it out like that, but if, for example, you've not got a round number, the easiest way to do it is do the 12 grand, so we have the amount including VAT, so we do 12,000, we divide that by 1.2. Now that will give us the amount excluding VAT. So then we can just take that off and figure out we've got 2 grand there. So what that means is I kind of have plus 2 grand going into the VAT pot. Now, obviously once we take out the VAT here, so if we kind of work this out, right? So the government owed me £200 because I bought a laptop and it had £200 worth of VAT on it. But then I sent an invoice and that invoice had 2 grand of VAT that I need to pay the government. So I owe the government 2 grand. So the government owes me 200, I owe them 2 grand. So we take that away and we actually end up with an amount payable of £1,800, which means it's not really cost me anything extra to charge VAT on here, but it has saved me £200 of VAT for something that I would have otherwise purchased. So that really is as simple as it is. You can register for VAT yourself, but I recommend doing it through your accountant because they keep it nice and simple. All bookkeeping software allows you to do this as well. So every purchase you make, you can say if it's got VAT and what the percentage is. It works it all out for you. And at the end of every 3 months, all you do is you go on and you go, click review, yep, that looks good, submit to HMRC, and then you send them a bank transfer for this amount. It really is as simple as that. Now you're probably thinking, well, you know, it sounds like a lot of fuss, but what's the point? Well, listen, I'm not going to do a new sheet, but I worked out before this video how much I save each year by actually being VAT registered on my purchases. So I worked out back in 2019, I saved about 2 grand for the whole year on purchases. So that could be things like desk chairs, office accessories and whatnot. Because I'm claiming the VAT back, I'm actually, whatever I see on the website, so this 1200 figure, I take 20% off of it. It's kind of like free money, it's awesome. And in 2020, it was about 1700 quid that I saved. And in 2021, I know we're not quite at the end of this year yet, but because I've bought a new MacBook Pro, nice and speedy, we're looking at probably about 2,700 that I've claimed back. So in all of those scenarios, that covers my limited accounts fee with my accountant. So it's kind of like a nice way of saying, do you know what, it's stuff that I need to buy in the business anyway, it's free money, it's covering my other costs, why not? Like I said, the only downside to being VAT registered is if you are working with a business to consumer relationship. So don't try and register yourself if it's too confusing. I didn't, I just called my accountant up and I said, can you please get me VAT registered and get me hooked up with that? They'll tell you everything you need to know, but it's 100% the easiest thing to do. Don't shy away from it. It saves you loads of money. And talking of which, on the next video, we're going to talk about accountants and how to choose the right accountant, the different costs associated with accountants, and whether you should or you shouldn't. Spoiler, you absolutely always should. No question about it. Anyway, I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for listening.